Hello everyone, welcome along to our Saturday webinar, and today we're going to talk all about teaching grammar. Okay, one of my very favourite topics, so I'm looking forward to all of the questions that you are going to pop in the chat box for me as we are going through our presentation. As ever, there will be a 25 to 30 minute presentation, and then after that a big Q&A session. All right. So just in case some of you are new and we haven't met before, my name is Mairead and I've been with the TEFL Academy since 2015. And I am currently at home in Ireland. I was lucky enough to teach in different countries all around Europe, but yeah, I'm home again. And yeah, I've been with the TEFL Academy now for 9 years. I can hardly believe it. So with our introductions out of the way, let's get going because, you know, today's topic is pretty vast. It can be a topic that sometimes makes students a little that sometimes makes teachers a little nervous, though students too, I'm not going to lie. Teaching grammar can be pretty daunting for newly qualified teachers. So today we're going to look at some tips that will hopefully take the mystery out of it somewhat and reassure you a little that it's not as scary as it seems. So when it comes to grammar, what is grammar? Well, basically, grammar is the way that language is organized. Okay, grammar refers to the rules that we follow when we speak. A lot of times, if English is your first language, you might not know the rules as you're speaking, okay? You're just forming sentences, yeah? You're doing it without even thinking. So don't worry if you don't know a whole lot about grammar, okay? If that's the case, you are not alone. A lot of teachers starting out find that they have to learn grammar from scratch, okay? So, you know, please don't think that it's an impossible task. It absolutely is not. I would say when it comes to grammar, don't expect to ever know everything, okay? There is probably not a person alive who knows all of grammar, okay? There is just so much of it. It's a massive, complex topic. You don't need to know everything in order to be an effective teacher, okay? In reality, you just need to stay one step ahead of your students, okay? I know a lot of new teachers put a lot of pressure on themselves and they never feel ready because they never know all the grammar. As I said, nobody knows everything, okay? So please don't put that overwhelming pressure on yourself. You just need to be one step ahead. So if, for example, you know nothing about conditionals, but you have to teach conditionals the following week, then you spend a few days reading up on conditionals, okay? You learn everything you can about them so that you can then teach them the following week, for example. So this is what I mean. You need to stay one step ahead. Look at what's coming ahead in the following weeks. And if you don't know much about that grammar topic, spend the time reading up on it. I know certainly when I started out teaching, I very much learned grammar by teaching it. Okay, and a lot of new teachers will find that. So yeah, stay one step ahead and that'll be good enough. And before you know it, the same grammar point will roll around with another class and you'll think, hey, I already know this. Yeah, and you teach it again and it gets easier. And by the time you've taught it 3 or 4 times, it's coming automatically to you. So yeah, put in the work the first time you teach a grammar point and it will stand to you forevermore. So here is an important term that we're going to start with. You're going to hear me use this term a lot throughout this presentation. We call the grammar point we are going to teach the target language. So we sometimes say TL for short, but target language. So if, for example, we are going to teach the future simple tense, then our target language is the future simple. If we are going to teach the first conditional, for example, our target language is the first conditional. So target language is a term that you're going to hear me use and you're going to encounter a lot when it comes to teaching grammar. This term is not necessarily for the students. Yeah, like I wouldn't teach my students the term target language, but for you as the teacher, this is the term you would use. So when it comes to target language, or teaching any grammar, the three very most important words you've got to remember are meaning, form, and phonology. Okay, we'll look at what these mean in a second. But you've got to keep these three things foremost in your mind when it comes to teaching target language. Meaning, form, and phonology. You may also see it in the order meaning, phonology, form. Yeah, same thing. It doesn't matter if form and phonology are the other way around. But even more commonly, you will see this referred to as MFP. Okay, just those three letters, MFP or MPF, same thing. So when you're doing the online course, you will come across MFP a lot. So that is what it stands for, meaning, form, and phonology. So let's see then what these terms actually mean. Well, when we talk about the meaning of a grammar point, we're referring to the function of the target language. Okay, why? Why do we use it? What's it for? So, for example, if our target language was the future simple, the function of the future simple is to talk about future events. Okay, that's why we use it. That's the meaning. In terms of form, well, form refers to how we make the target language. Okay, what is the construction? For example, the form of the future simple is subject plus will plus infinitive. Infinitive is just the verb in its most basic form. For example, if I say, I will go, that is the future simple. Okay, I is the subject, will is will, and go is the infinitive of the verb to go. Some other examples could be, I will make, yeah, or I will celebrate. Okay, that is the future simple, subject plus will plus infinitive. Infinitive can also be called base form. Okay, you may hear either of those terms, both mean the same thing. And then the phonology. Well, phonology is related to pronunciation. Okay, what does it sound like? Yeah, I will go. Yeah, I will see, I will do. Okay, see how we kind of run it together, the subject and the will. I will go. And we tend to stress the infinitive. Another thing that's really important to remember about phonology is contractions, especially when it comes to tenses. For example, if I'm talking to my friends, I would not say, I will go tomorrow. Yeah, I'd contract. I'd say, I'll go. Yeah, or I would not say, you will have a great time. I would say, you'll have a great time. So the I'll, you'll, he'll, yeah, I won't, she won't. All of these contractions are equally important to teach. Students need to know what they sound like. Okay. So when you are teaching the target language, you will be teaching the meaning, why we use it. You will be teaching the form, how we make it, and you will be teaching phonology, okay, what it sounds like. So MFP, keep those letters in your head. Now, when we want to teach the MFP of our target language, we don't just want to tell our students, we don't want to just say, today we're learning the future simple. It's for future events. We make it with subject, will, infinitive, and it sounds like this. We do not want to do that, okay? that is like information overload for your students. And it will be literally in one ear, out the other. Okay. So how do we make our students learn grammar more effectively? Well, we do this by eliciting. Now, if you have already gone a fair distance into the online course, you will be familiar with this term, okay? If you have not encountered this term before, like if you're only starting out, let me tell you what eliciting means. This is a key concept in teaching grammar. It involves trying to get the students to tell you before you tell them, okay? So we never want to spoon feed our students, okay? Instead, we want to lead them towards discovering something themselves, okay? So eliciting keeps students engaged in the learning process. So imagine I want to teach all of you about the future simple, okay? So I might start out by saying something like, everybody, I am so excited. Okay, ask me why. Yeah, so your students will say, why? Well, you know, why are you excited? Why are you so happy? And I will say, well, now it is 3 o'clock, but at 9 o'clock, something exciting is happening at 9 o'clock. Our students will ask, oh, why? What's happening? And I could say, at 9 o'clock, it's party time. And hopefully my students get a bit excited with me. I say, party time. So at 9 o'clock, and hopefully my students will say, oh, you will go. Yeah. So at 9 o'clock, I will go. Good. So I will go to a party. So you see, I haven't just given my students a sentence directly. I haven't said to them, I'm excited because at 9 o'clock I'll go to a party. Instead, I have set up a context and I have hopefully prompted my students to tell me the target language. Okay. Now, if the students don't know and they have no clue, of course you can tell them, okay? But always give them the chance to tell you before you tell them. So once my students have told me the sentence, I will go to a party, I would write that on the board and I would say, okay, everybody, let's look at this sentence. How do we make this tense? What is I? And hopefully students will tell me subject. So I will write subject. What comes next? Pointing to will. And the students will tell me, oh, next, will. It's like, okay, so subject, will. What comes next? What is go? And the students will tell me that's the infinitive, or that's the base form. So I will end up with subject plus will plus infinitive. And again, I haven't told my students the form. Instead, I have elicited it. I've helped them to figure out the form themselves. Okay, they're telling me instead of me telling them under my guidance. All right. So once you have established the form, then you can ask them, who knows, what's the name of this tense? Can anybody tell me? What's it called? Now, you can also do that at the beginning of the process. It makes no difference. But personally, I like to have them figure out the form, and then elicit the name of the tense. And if they don't know, I'll tell them. And then I will say the sentence a few times. I will model it. I will say it correctly. And I will ask the students to repeat it after me. Okay. And I'll ask them, like, what do you notice about the pronunciation? What words do we stress? Okay. And then I will say, now, listen to it this time. And I'll say it with contractions. And I'll ask them, what's different? What sounds shorter? What words go together? So again, I will demonstrate the pronunciation, but they will tell me. in as much detail as they can, yeah, what the pronunciation features are. So honestly, the most important thing you can do when it comes to grammar is elicit. Okay, get the students to tell you before you tell them. All right, so hopefully that made sense. If not, you can ask me more about it in our questions and answers. So we just did a demonstration of eliciting the MFP of the future simple. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about tenses, because tenses are not the only part of grammar by any means, but they probably will be the thing that you will teach the most. Okay, so just a little background about tenses for you, just in case you're not familiar. There are 12 tenses. Can you believe it? 12 tenses in the English language. 4 are related to the present, 4 are related to the past, and 4 are related to the future. Okay, so 4, 4, 4 makes 12. Now, just for an added bit of confusion, yeah, as if grammar wasn't confusing enough, sometimes within our tenses, they can have slightly different names. Okay, and you'll find that's a feature of language terminology. Why have one term when you could have 3 different ones, right? And everybody uses something different, but they all mean the same. So, for example, if you are teaching the present continuous, you might also see that referred to as the present progressive. Okay, so continuous or progressive, it's the same thing. Okay, just different terms for the same thing. Or, for example, if you are teaching the past simple, you may also see that referred to as the simple past. Okay, reverse the order. Why not? It's the same thing. Okay, past simple, simple past, simple present, present simple. So try not to stress too much about this, but just be aware that some things in grammar will have multiple names, and all of those names are correct. They're just different. But yeah, the continuous progressive one, yeah, that took me a while to get my head around when I started teaching. It means the same thing. All right, so just be on the lookout for that. So how do you approach teaching tenses? Well, first and foremost, you have got to do your research. Okay, and this is where lesson planning really helps you a lot. Okay, of course, there are a million reasons why you should lesson plan, but particularly for a grammar lesson, because that will help you research what you need to know. If you're following our PPP structure, present, practice, produce, you'll find out way more about that in the online material if you haven't already. In the presentation stage, that is where you will plan how to teach the MFP of the target language you're teaching. So in order to teach it, you've got to know it beforehand, okay, as you are staying one step ahead of your students. So you will take out your grammar books, or you will go to Google and you will research everything you can about the meaning, form, and phonology of your target language, whatever that may be. Okay. When you're starting out as a teacher, you will find that researching and learning the grammar point yourself will seem to take a long time. Okay. And that's normal because you're learning it. Okay. You're putting in a lot of time yourself, just learning it, learning the terms, learning the meaning, the form, and the phonology. It may seem like that's an endless process, but persevere. It's really important that you do it because, as I said, once you've taught it twice, 3 times, 4 times, all of this comes to you automatically. So put in the hard work researching in the beginning, and that will stand to you in the future. So once you are clear with the MFP yourself, okay, then it's time to really start lesson planning. Establish a context for your lesson. That will usually happen in the warmer stage. like that whole thing on the future simple that we saw before, I might set a context of parties, okay? And in the warmer, I might have them talk about, you know, their favorite type of party, yeah, or their most memorable birthday party, okay, or a party that they have planned for next year, yeah, or the next party they will attend. So you've got to set a relatable context. You've got to engage your students with a context before you start eliciting all of this grammar, meaning, form, and phonology. Then use this context to elicit an example of the target language. Okay. So try to get the students to give you a sentence before you give them one. And then, as we said, elicit the meaning, form, and phonology. Okay, elicit everything. That is the key. Okay, so another thing that is incredibly important is asking CCQs. Just in case you haven't encountered these in the online course yet, CCQ stands for Concept Checking Questions. And the function of CCQs is to check students' understanding. Okay. So we need to know that they've understood, because if they haven't, we will have to go back and, you know, go over the key points again. All right. You know, we can't move on until we know that they've understood. So that is where CCQs come in. We might ask 2, we might ask 3, we might even ask 4. It depends on the complexity of what we're teaching. So typically with CCQs for tenses, we check the time reference. Okay, so for example, does this sentence refer to the past, the present, or the future? Okay. This is a way of us knowing that students have understood, okay, well, it's about the past, or we're talking about now, or, as is the case with the future simple, we're talking about a time to come. Okay, we're talking about the future. You may also want to check the state of the action. Okay, like, is the action complete? Is it in progress? Yeah, what's the state of the action? Now, state of the action won't always be relevant. It kind of depends on the tense, but if it is relevant, okay, we've got to check it. For example, imagine I have just taught the present continuous, aka the present progressive. Imagine I have taught my students, I am doing a webinar. Okay, I am doing a webinar. As my CCQ, I might ask them, I am doing a webinar. When? Past, present, or future? And hopefully my students say present or now. Yeah. If they say past, I know something is wrong and I've got to go back over it. They haven't understood. But if they know that it's in the present, that's good. I know they've understood. I might also ask them, I'm doing a webinar. Is this action finished or is it still happening? Yeah. Or is this action finished or in progress? And hopefully they will say in progress. Yeah. So there we go. They are the 2 CCQs we need. Okay. We've established when and we've established the state of the action. Another thing you can do is use timelines. Okay, we will look at an example in a moment. A timeline is basically a visual representation of a tense. Again, not every tense lends itself well to a timeline, but a lot of them do. So definitely consider if they're useful and use them. I would also say when it comes to teaching tenses, and indeed any grammar, don't rush it. Okay, take your time. Yeah, you know, elicit with patience, give students time to think, give them lots of time to process, ask your CCQs at a nice steady pace. Okay, don't rush it, take your time. Students need a lot of time to process grammar, I find. Okay, so just going back quickly to timelines. This would be an example of a timeline if you were teaching the first conditional. Now, the first conditional is a sentence with if. An example would be, if I have time next weekend, I'll go to the shop. Okay, so if I have time next weekend, I'll go to the shop. Or the example on our timeline, if the weather is good, I'll go to the beach. We can see here in our timeline, we have past, present, and future. And we have our future conditional happening in the future. Oh, our first conditional happening in the future. Okay, see, it's not present because, if I have time next weekend, we're talking about the future, right? Next weekend, I'll go to the shop. And that is happening further in the future. So the timeline here shows clearly that both parts of that sentence are happening in the future, one after the other. So timelines can be incredibly useful. There is a big section in the online course all about how to use them. If you can't think of a timeline, I always Google. I will just Google timeline first conditional or timeline future simple. Okay, so look for help from Google if you need it. So another thing we've got to bear in mind when it comes to teaching grammar is that we do a lot of different practice activities. Because once we've elicited and taught the target language, we have then got to let our students work with it. So normally, after we have our presentation stage, where we establish the meaning, form, and phonology, we then do a controlled practice. So this is typically like a gap fill exercise or some sort of grammar worksheet, maybe a matching activity. The controlled practice tests accuracy. There is only one right answer. Okay, so in the controlled practice stage, we want our students to sit down in silence and think about it, to run through it in their heads, to use what they have learned in theory. Then once we have done that and we are secure that students know the meaning, form, and phonology and can use it in theory in a sentence, we would then move on to freer practice. Freer practice gives the students the chance to use the target language in a suitable fluency-based speaking task. Okay, so we want our students to speak, and we want to give them the opportunity to use the target language as much as they can. So you might do a role play. For example, in our future simple example, you might tell them, you might put them in pairs and say, okay guys, you two are best friends and you are planning your next trip abroad. You're planning your next holiday. Okay, so together, sit down and decide, your destination, the things you'll do there, how much money you'll need, etc. So in that task, they will naturally use the target language. And they'll have some purpose. The task will have an outcome that they need to achieve. So you will need to plan a controlled practice and a freer practice. But just, I know we've talked a lot about tenses there over the last 20 minutes. But please be aware, grammar is not just tenses. Okay, there is so much more to grammar. So things like syntax. So syntax means word order. For example, in English, we would typically follow adjective plus noun. So we would say, that's a blue car, or that's a great idea. Okay, adjective, noun. Why? I don't know. It's just why we do it. That's just the order we follow. We do not say, for example, noun plus adjective. We do not say, that's an idea, great. Now, the thing is, in a lot of other languages, the order is noun adjective. So we will need to explicitly teach our students the order that words typically go in English. So all of that is called syntax. And it's something that we do quite a lot. Other things might be countable, uncountable nouns. So I'm sure we are all aware of what a noun is. So a person, a place, or a thing is the definition I learned when I was at school. But we can further break down those nouns into things we can count and things we cannot. Okay, so things we can put a number with, things we cannot. For example, I would not say, can I have 4 monies, please? Yeah, monies is not a thing. Okay, we have to keep it with money, singular. We cannot put it with a number. So if we cannot count it, it is uncountable. All right. Whereas other nouns, for example, car, we can say 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars, to infinity. All right. They would be countable. So this is a massive area of grammar in itself, countable, uncountable nouns. Other things might be modal verbs, can, could, should, shall, will, would. Okay, again, it's a whole other category of grammar all in itself. Conditionals, all of our sentences with if. Yeah, there are tons of aspects of grammar. So this brings me back to what I said at the beginning. Like, don't feel bad if you don't know much of it when you start off. You learn it by teaching it. Okay, so please don't stress yourselves out unnecessarily, feeling that you don't know everything. It all comes with time. Okay, so just to finish, how do you avoid getting completely overwhelmed by grammar when you're starting out? Well, just take it 1 point at a time. Okay, 1 grammar point at a time. Stay 1 step ahead. Accept that you will learn it as you teach it. I know that can be hard, especially if you're a bit of a control freak like I am. You know, we will just want to know everything and we will want to know it now. But you've just got to accept, give yourselves up to the grammar universe, accept that you will learn it as you go. Okay, you will not know everything. Take your own notes to revise. So if you've spent a lot of time researching, for example, the present perfect for the first time, take notes. Okay, make your own grammar reference. Okay, and look over them. Make flashcards. Yeah, do whatever it takes to help you remember. Try to learn and use the correct terminology. I know it can be tricky in the beginning. You know, what is subject? What is object? What is infinitive? You know, what is gerund? Yeah, what is base form? You know, I do recognize that that is tough, but push yourself on this from the beginning, because as soon as you can master the terminology, yeah, everything else will be so much easier. Okay, once you know the terms. And the good news is the terms are the terms. You know, once you know them, and there will likely not be any major changes in them. So try to learn and use the correct terminology from the beginning. Basically, everyone, you just have to play the long game when it comes to grammar. Okay, there are no quick fixes. Okay, you've got to put in the work. You've got to amass the knowledge over time, but you will get there. I promise. Play the long game. All right, and they are my words of wisdom when it comes to teaching grammar. I know that's been a ton of information. As always, in the next few days, this webinar will go up on YouTube. So when it comes to the grammar sections of the online course, or perhaps when you have to do your grammar assignments, please come back and watch this, and it will make far more sense the next time you watch, when you've had time to take it all in. All right, so that's enough from me for the moment. I'm going to head across to the chat box. I'm going to look and see where you're all from. And that will give you time to pop your questions into the chat box. Okay, anything you want to know about teaching grammar, please put in your question. Or maybe it's a question about grammar itself. Yeah, pop it in. Okay, so let me make myself bigger on screen. All right, so let's see where everybody is. We have Jeannie in Canada. Good morning, good afternoon, Jeannie. Hi, Victoria. I recognize your name. And Joe. And oh, Carlene from Jamaica. Welcome. I saw you last week. So hello, South Africa, Australia, Scotland, UK. Hello, Shiki in Cameroon. So Saji from Iran, hi, how's it going? I hope you've had a good week. So Deborah, hello. So Victoria, when would be the best time to tell students the name of the target language, at the beginning or the end? Yeah, great question, Victoria. Honestly, whatever feels best to you. Personally, I like to do it once I've elicited an example sentence and we've talked about the meaning and I've elicited the form. I like to do it then. But, you could easily do that at the beginning too. Like once you've elicited your sentence, you could ask them then, oh, what tense do you think this is? Or what do we call this tense? It doesn't really matter, Victoria, whatever feels most logical to you. As long as we do establish it at some stage, that's the important thing. Okay. So Saji, they have more than one name, as if my brain isn't suffering enough. Oh, Saji, I know, right? Why so many terms for the same thing? I know, it's really annoying, but it's just grammar. What can we say? It likes to make our brains hurt sometimes. Okay. So hello, Besalu, how are you? Can you explain what modals are? Sure. So Besalu, modal verbs are their own little family of verbs. Okay, they're quite special. They express things like obligation, yeah, like you must do this, yeah, or you mustn't. Prohibition, you mustn't do this. Things like probability, yeah, it might happen, it could happen, yeah, it may happen, yeah, or they express a whole range of like rather abstract concepts like that. Okay, like hypothetical things. Well, I would, yeah, or that would be nice. Yeah, I would go, but okay. So basically, modal verbs, they're a family of verbs that express abstract concepts like obligation, prohibition, ability, hypothetical scenarios, etc. Ability, yeah, things like can, yeah, that's probably one of the first things the students will learn. Like I can swim, yeah, I can't drive. Okay. So yeah, they are modals. And they're very interesting in that they all follow a set of rules when it comes to form or structure. For example, we always follow them with infinitive, like I can drive, yeah, I must go, yeah, I would love, okay, yeah, shall I stay, okay. So, they all have a lot in common form-wise, which I always think is fascinating. But yeah, that is a very quick introduction to modals. They're a lot of fun, but they can be sometimes complex in that one modal verb can express many different concepts. Okay. For example, could, yeah. I could read when I was 4. Yeah, this expresses ability, right? Ability in the past. I could read when I was 4. But it also, we could also use it in the context of it could happen, but and here it's more denoting some sort of probability. So, they have their moments, but they are incredibly useful. All right, thank you, Besalu. Great question. Okay. Let's see. Let's get some more questions. So, hello, Maliti from Sri Lanka. Oh, welcome. So far away, other side of the world from me. I'd like to know how to teach grammar in an online context more effectively. Yeah, so actually, Maliti, there aren't a whole lot of differences between teaching grammar in a face-to-face classroom or online. Okay, so everything I've said so far can equally be done in an online class. It's all about eliciting, yeah, getting the students to do the work. Okay, you set them up, you guide them, but they are the ones to try to figure out the meaning, form, and phonology. Yeah. So everything I've said today is 100% applicable to an online class. I would say, Maliti, just really push that extra mile to make it engaging and to involve your students by eliciting. Okay, don't let them just sit there in front of their screens doing nothing. Okay, make them central to the process. Okay, so hopefully that helps. If you have any more specific questions, please put them in the chat box and we will answer them too. Okay, so hello, Anushka from Mozambique. Welcome. Welcome to the course. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so hello, Aoife. Oh, from Ireland. I guessed with a name like Aoife. Living in Germany, very good. Before introducing students to grammar, would you recommend giving the students a similar advice and way to approach grammar themselves? Yeah, why not? Like if you're teaching teenagers or adults, yeah, you should absolutely reassure them that, you know, grammar need not be terrifying. Okay, so, you know, reassure them. We're going to learn it bit by bit. Okay, if you have any questions, ask me. It's normal to make mistakes with it. You won't learn everything this year. Yeah. So, you know, let's just figure it out together. Okay, offer as much reassurance as you can. Honestly, though, Aoife, I find that a lot of students around the world already have a pretty firm grasp of grammar because they will have learned English at school. You know, maybe they won't be able to speak or understand so well, but the likelihood is they will have studied grammar at some stage. So you'll often find that your students might know the English grammar a little bit better than you, but of course, in the beginning, but of course, you'll be able to use it a lot better. And that is what you'll be teaching them, really, yeah, to give them practice to using it correctly. But it would be rare that students know no grammar whatsoever. So, you know, that can help. You know, they may already know some of the terminology, for example. But yeah, absolutely. Offer as much reassurance as you think they need. Okay. So thank you, Aoife. Okay. So hello, Wendy. Eliciting the same as open-ended questioning students by leading. Yeah, Wendy, pretty much. It need not always be open-ended, but yeah, you are leading them towards figuring it out for themselves rather than just telling them. Yeah, exactly. I always think of it as, yeah, guiding, leading. Yeah, basically giving them the chance to tell you before you tell them. Okay, you're setting everything up for them. Okay, to lead them to the meaning, form, and phonology. Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. You are on the right track for sure. Okay, so Natalie, when teaching online, is it better to create a digital presentation that you can share with students? Yeah, Natalia, maybe. The thing is, when it comes to teaching grammar, I am not such a fan of presentations because you want them to figure out the meaning, form, and phonology. Okay. But if you just put it up on a slide, like this is the name of the target language, this is the form, this is the pronunciation features, then you can't elicit because you've already shown it to them. So I must say that I am not such a fan of presentations when it comes to teaching grammar because it often negates the eliciting part. Now, of course, you may set it up differently so that, you know, you're just using images maybe to set up context, or you're using like example sentences, but you're not putting the meaning or the form. Yeah. In which case that could work. Yeah, if you don't put the meaning or form until like the very end once you've elicited it from them. But yeah, just, you know, don't give them everything on a slide because that will negate the whole eliciting process that is so important. But yeah, good question, Natalie. So yeah, it could work just for images to set context, example sentences, etc. But yeah, don't give them everything. Make them work for it. Okay, thank you, Natalie. Okay, so hello, Naima. I'm from Nepal, living in Hungary. Oh, how interesting. I know very little about either of those countries, so it sounds great to have you here. May I know how to understand grammar better? Yeah, Naima, just study, okay? I would recommend that you get yourself a good grammar book. For example, if you have access to a school library, I guarantee they will have grammar reference books there. Something like Raymond Murphy, Essential Grammar in Use. That's a useful book because it breaks all of the topics down, and it gives really clear explanations of each tense or each aspect of grammar. It's the Essential Grammar in Use. It's really aimed at students rather than teachers. So, it's extra simplified. I learned a lot of my grammar initially from Raymond Murphy. I'm going to pop his name and the name of the book in the chat box just in case you want to look out for it. So Raymond Murphy, Essential English Grammar. Is it grammar or English grammar? Well, either English grammar or grammar in use. So that's a really good book. Another book that I absolutely love is by a guy called Martin Parrott, and it's called Grammar for English Language Teachers. Excuse me, I'm going to close my window. My neighbor has decided to start mowing the lawn. Oh, the joys of online teaching. My neighbor just decided to start cutting his grass and is being incredibly noisy. So invest in a good grammar book, I would say. All right, that would be my first tip. And again, as you teach the grammar, you will research it in advance and you will learn. Yeah, you will learn as you go. Another thing you can do is get your hands on some course books, some student books. There is always a really nice condensed grammar reference section in the back of course books. And again, because they are intended for students rather than teachers, they're often really nicely simplified with lots of examples, etc. So yeah, Naima, there's, again, as we said in the presentation, there is no quick fix to this. You've just got to put in the time and the research. Invest in a good grammar book, yeah, or get your hands on some textbooks, okay, and just study, make notes. Personally, I loved flashcards. Yeah, every time I learned a new term, I would make it into a flashcard. I would build up my collection and, flick through them whenever I had 5 minutes. And that's how I learned. You've just got to put in the hours. But yeah, it's really interesting, especially like I found that once I got to grips, once I was a few months in and I got to grips with the basics, then I just wanted to learn more. It just kind of grabs your attention. Just, give into it, accept that you will never avoid it. And yeah, it's actually really, really interesting once you get into it and once you lose that initial apprehension. All right, so good luck, Naima. Okay. So Maliti, can I know what sort of student-centered activities would you recommend when teaching grammar apart from role play? Yeah, so anything communicative, Maliti. So role play is one example, but you could also do it as, interviews, yeah, where students ask each other questions, yeah, based around the target language. You could get everybody to stand up, for example, and do a mingle activity where everybody has a different question that they need to ask their classmates. Or you could do Another thing where you you print out questions on a nice big piece of paper, one question per sheet of paper, and then you stick the sheets of paper up around the classroom so that students need to get out of their seats, walk around, with a partner or a group of 3. And, as they go to each new question, they need to stop and talk about it for a minute. Give their answers, find out, each other's opinions, etc. Another thing you can do is just prepare a simple discussion task, where you give students a handout with maybe 5 topics on it, and they need to move through the list talking about their opinions, etc. Another thing you could do is, instead of using questions, just give them pictures, pictures related to whatever the context you have established are, or questions about your context. For example, if your context is travel, you could give them different pictures of different travel destinations, and let them talk about them, like, oh, maybe we'll do this, when we're here we will, etc., etc. Okay, so images can be an amazing source of discussion prompts. What else could you do? You could do activities like find someone who, where, for example, you give students a list, like find someone who has been to Paris, find someone who has ridden an elephant, okay, find someone who has been in an accident, okay. Now, this imagining that you have just taught them the present perfect tense. So then students need to get up, walk around, ask everybody questions, and try to find someone who corresponds to one of the prompts on their page. Another thing I used to do a lot, like if I was doing grammar and I wanted to combine controlled practice and freer practice, I would make questions using the target language, but I would jumble up all of the words, on a piece of paper, so that students would first need to unjumble the sentence, to make the correct sentence or question, and then they would have to discuss it with their partner. So, lots of activities you can do, Maliti. Anything to get your students talking, and preferably up and moving, to break up the whole sitting at a desk for an hour thing. I'm sure it will work really well. You can get as creative as you like when it comes to communicative tasks. All right, thank you, Maliti. Good question. Okay. So Natalie, I had some audio issues. Oh, sorry to hear that. I'm not sure if this was discussed. How do you gracefully say that you don't have the answer? Oh, Natalie, I love this question, because that is one of the things that we really need to be able to do. Please never, ever, ever bluff an answer. If you don't know, all you need to say is, oh, that's a great question. I hadn't actually thought of that before. Let me find out and I'll tell you tomorrow. Okay. Just admit it, like, oh, that's a great question. Yeah, let me look into that, and I'll tell you in the next class. Okay, that's all you need to do. Okay. Never make something up, because guaranteed the students will catch you out, or you will catch yourself out. So yeah, that's all you need to do. Great question. I've never really thought of that before. Yeah, that sounds nicer than I don't know, but it conveys the same message. I've never thought about that before, but let me find out and I'll get back to you. And then make sure you do get back to them. Okay, that's the key point. Students won't mind waiting as long as they do get an answer eventually. All right. Another thing you can do, Natalie, if it's a class that, has quite a good grasp of grammar, you might say, oh, Jorge, can you ask that question again, please, for the whole class? So Jorge ask the question again, and then ask the students, okay, can anybody answer this? Yeah, can anyone answer Jorge's question? And chances are somebody will probably be able to answer it. So let them give their ideas, but then you will end by saying, okay, well, I will check and I will definitely let you know in the next class. So yeah, great question, Natalie. Thank you. Yeah, always be truthful, find out and let them know. Great question. Thank you, Natalie. So hello, Bangui from South Africa. Welcome. MFP is the term for students or just us? Really, that would be for the teacher. Yeah, it's just a way for the teacher to keep it organized in their heads. Yeah, we don't need to tell students MFP. I mean, you might use it. Like actually thinking about it, I do use the word form quite a lot with the students. Like, what's the form or what's the structure? But yeah, I mean, you could use the words with the students, but really it's more for the teacher just to have it straight in your head. Yeah, the elements that you need to work on. All right, thank you, Bangui. Great question. Okay, so Saji, we read Raymond Murphy's English Grammar in Use in University as our grammar guide, and it's phenomenal. It is, Saji. I'm so glad you're also a fan. Yeah, I love that book. And the really good thing about it, if you're brand new to grammar, this book comes in 3 different levels. So I know the red one, and a lot of students will call it Red Murphy. So the red one, for example, is for elementary students. So the red one is like the most basic explanations of grammar, and therefore, excellent for people who are just starting out learning about grammar. And then there's also an intermediate version and an advanced version. But yeah, Red Murphy is a great place to start. All right. All right. So, do we have any other questions? Let me check. I'm just going to go back and make sure that I haven't missed anything, because we have 2 minutes left and it would be a shame not to use them. Our time has flown by as ever. Okay. Okay, I think I have answered all of the questions. So, Vesalu, you have a question. This is an easy one for me to answer. This is my easiest question of the day. So it's nice to end on a confident note. So we spell it like this in the chat box. So Mairead. Okay, it's one of those crazy Irish names that sounds completely different to how it looks. So yeah, it rhymes with parade. So imagine you're saying parade, but with an M at the beginning. And Julio, Julio, of course. Yes, we met last week. Now I remember. Welcome, Julio. Thank you for coming back. Okay. So guys, if there are no other questions, let's wrap up. Okay, because it's been a pretty intense hour. Thank you so much for your attention and all of your great questions. Just a reminder, all of our previous webinars are available on our YouTube channel. So go along to YouTube, search for the TEFL Academy, and you will find dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of webinars, okay, going back years. So please check them out. And as I think I said before, this webinar will be available in a couple of days. So it will be here for you when you need it. Yeah, when you get to the part of the course on teaching grammar or when you start figuring out your assignments. Yeah, please come back and rewatch and it will be helpful. I will also ask you a small favor, and that is to take 2 more minutes to fill out a very short webinar, a very short survey on this webinar. We always like to know what you think, if there's anything we could do better, or if there are any topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So you can scan the QR code, or I will pop a direct link in the chat box. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So thanks again, everybody. I really hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, the rest of your weekend, and I hope that we will see each other again someday soon. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.